Hi all, Rob here from Way Out West. I have a terrific interview for you today, none other than the incredibly talented Geoff Achison, who together with his band The Soul Diggers will be at our club on the 15th of December from 2pm. Geoff will be releasing his new CD next week titled Don't Play Guitar Boys. In our interview we talk about the history of the Diggers and we have a discussion about the trials of being a professional musician in today's environment. We also talk in depth about the pros and cons of vinyl versus CD versus streaming. Also, did you know that Geoff started off as a bass player and that Roger McLaughlin, the Diggers' current bass player, started off as a lead guitarist back in his native New Zealand? I have an incredible photo for you of Roger's first band, Roger's Dodgers. As always, please hit the like and subscribe button and share the video with your friends, as it sure helps me out to know that people are looking in. The Soul Diggers always put on a first-class show, so we hope to see you all on the 15th. And as always, rock on, my friend. Can you tell me what inspired you to form the Soul Diggers back in 1994?
Oh, look, I just was a habitual songwriter, I guess. And so I had a whole bunch of tunes I'd written, but I had been playing for several years before that with Dutch Tilders and the Blues Club, which was fantastic. And it was just amazing to be employed as Dutch's lead guitar player. But of course, that was Dutch's show. You know, anytime you were on stage with Dutch, that was the Dutchman's show, and I was there to back him up, which I loved. And I love that still. I love to be employed just to come and play guitar for people. It's part of what I do. But another part of what I do is I write songs, and I guess that. Yeah, if there was any inspiration for forming the band, it was simply to have a vehicle to play those songs that were swimming around my head.
And who was in the original Soul Diggers, Geoff?
Well, the original band, it was Winston Gallier on drums, who was my bandmate with Dutch Tilders and the Blues Club. So we have Winnie, a guy called John Arthur on bass guitar, Keith Nolan on keys, and then we had backing singers Jackie Gordian, who's a fantastic blues singer around town, and Catherine Day. Who's also a wonderful singer. So so that was the original lineup, and we did the album was Big Machine. 1990. It was recorded in 93, released in 94, with our newly formed independent label, Jupiter 2 Records.
The Soul Diggers go way back with Way Out West. 23 years we've been going, and I know you guys played in our first year. You had a great keyboard player with you in those days, Mel Logan.
Yeah.
He was sensational, and he's a living icon of Australian music, isn't he?
Yeah, he sure is. I mean, I still remember my very first time walking into the Espy Hotel in St Kilda, and as I was walking through the doors, the big PA system in the front bar. So as I was walking into the front bar, and the opening strains of Golden Miles had just kicked off, which is Mel's, classic, iconic Hammond organ line. That still kind of sends a shiver down my spine, and it was quite a moment. It's getting my first view of what the St Kilda music scene was all about too. So, getting Mel's phone number, which was given to me, I think, by Glenn Suckling, a great bass player who was working with me for a while. And so then I had Mel Logan's phone number, and every now and again I'd sit by the phone. It's the old dial-up phone, but I'd sit by the phone with the number and start dialing it, and then chicken out halfway through. talk to this guy. You
Well,
know?
with any of the dealings I had with Mel Logan, he was just a fantastic guy, or he's a fantastic guy.
Oh yeah,
No pretense or anything about him.
yeah, get very down to earth,
Yeah,
an absolute gentleman, and
yeah,
I think the rest of us, we always felt he was the best musician in the band,
yeah.
and and just had this greatness. It still does. He's just got this greatness
Yeah.
about him. You
And
know?
he sits there with this big smile on his face too. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So it was the man. It was the biggest thrill for me to play so many gigs with Mal for so long,
Yeah.
and of course he's on some of our classic recordings. Yeah.
When forming the band, did you already have a vision of the style? Because yeah, it's a blues band, but it's got its own style. Is that something you consciously done?
To a degree, I guess, Rob. But I often I often cite bands like the Allman Brothers Band as kind of being like the blueprint for what I for the kind of band that I wanted to be into, and what I loved about the Allman Brothers Band and bands of that ilk, music of that ilk, was that it's a blues band, but uh, the tentacles go out, and so there's elements of country music, and there's elements of jazz, and there's elements of folk and gospel and whatever, whatever sounds good. It's like, oh, let's take a bit of that and pop a bit of that in there, and the improvisational part of it was always, I still am. I'm very big on that. My I guess my approach as a musician, as it is for many musicians, is that I want, with my instrument, I'm trying to learn how to fly. I just want to close my eyes. That's why you see, musicians. I'll do the guitar thing because I'm a guitarist. They're just their heads back like that, and the eyes are closed, and it's the best. But you're just like you're floating up there somewhere while the music's playing. It's not all happening here with your fingers on the fretboard. And when it is, usually what's coming out isn't necessarily the most inspiring. It's the most inspiring music you'll hear is when musicians are just like, flying somewhere. And it's like surfing, it's like catching waves of music and just riding it and see where it goes. And that's what I wanted the Soul Diggers to be.
It's interesting because I've two things. Obviously, I never got to see Joanne Allman, but and my wife Wendy's late into the music scene, sort of. So we went to Muscle Shoals, and she couldn't understand. They had a life-size cutout of Joanne Allman. I said, I want a photo with my arm around. She said, why do you want a photo with a cutout? I said, it's pretty important.
Well, the fact that it's at Muscle Shoals as well. Yeah.
When you were talking before about, being on stage, at least I had a question later on, because when I see you on stage, I see someone that's having the most enjoyable time, and you're really wanting the audience to come along with you. Am I right in saying that?
Oh yeah. That's what it's all about. There's lots of aspects to being a musician and being in the industry, but for me, all roads lead to playing live on stage. That's the best. That's the best to look out and see that people have connected and that they're along for the ride. It's the greatest. Like you look at it, it's like, hey, this is good shit, isn't it? It's
right.
It's the greatest. I mean, that connection that you get then it's just the biggest buzz, as far as I'm.
Yeah. The legendary Jorma Kaukonen, who played with Jefferson Airplane and more recently Hot Tuna, he said of you, and I quote, Geoff is one of the finest blues guitarists I know, with a completely individual style. And I agree with that. There's some artists around the world where you hear it and you go, now I know who that is. Again, I know you've taken inspiration from people, but are you self-taught or?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, you're making us think that you do.
Yeah, I'm not trained at all. I had a couple of teachers early on when I was a kid, but they basically showed me how to tune it up and how to form chords and and then I was I was on my way. But look, I struggled with my second teacher was trying to teach me how to read, and for whatever I don't know, I can't connect what I see on the paper with what I'm playing with my fingers. The dots dance in front of my eyes and just go all over the place. For whatever reason, that didn't work for me. But I did always seem to have, there's people that have a better ear than me, I think. But people used to say I had a good feel for it. So when you're learning an instrument, everybody's going to bring their own strengths to it. So if you're lucky, you can figure out what your strengths are and focus on that. But I put an extraordinary amount of time into trying to emulate my favourite players, as most of us do, and that's a great way to learn. But there were a couple of occasions that when I would feel that I was really starting to sound like another musician, that's when I'd back off and think, okay, I don't want to be the second best Albert Collins or the second best Freddie King or whatever. I want to find my sound. I want to figure out what I sound like, and that's the pursuit. But what you said before, that's what really catches my ear, is hearing a musician who you can identify by in just 2 or 3 notes, and you can go, aha, that's Albert King, or Miles Davis, or whoever. But they're the musicians that really impressed me.
We many years ago, we had a young guy come with his band. I won't say who, and he was great, but he played probably 95% Stevie Ray Vaughan. And his mum came up and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "He's great, but I can go home and listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan." And now he's and I see him at festivals now. And I've got no ability whatsoever, but he's he'll play a couple of Stevie Ray Vaughan songs, and that's fine. But he's got his own style, which I think is so important.
Oh, yeah, it depends on what you want to pursue and what it's all about for you. But I think all of us begin by emulation of what we hear. That's where all of us begin, and I still practice at home, trying to copy a sound that I've heard. And a lot of it is because I'm utterly fascinated by how, whether it's Jeff Beck or Sonny Landreth or Jeff Lang, whose album I've been listening to lately. And you're just listening to the instrument and just how did he make it sound like that? And so there's a certain amount of curiosity. But once you figure it out, it's like, okay, well, what I say to my students is I say, look, get the spirit of it, but then see if you can mold your own version of that rather than copying it outright.
And what's the writing process for you, Geoff? Does the music come first and then the words, or vice versa, or
always the music?
Yeah. Okay.
It's always the music. I think I think I'm one of those guitar players that probably feels that like when I come up with a piece of music, my main thought is like, wow, this would be really cool to jam on.
Yeah.
But we need to have a theme, and we need to organise it so that we can perform it rather than just meandering through a bunch of chords. So I'm constantly coming up with just little grooves and riffs and chord progressions that I jam along with here at home. That comes relatively easily to me. I can just come up with something, and like if someone comes over and we're having a jam, it's like, all right, here's a couple of chords, and we'll just play and jam. But that just disappears into the ether once it's gone. Yeah. Whereas songwriting is kind of it's an extension of that improvisation process, where so the chords may come to me, the groove may come together, but occasionally I'm just lucky, some vocal phrase will enter and maybe some words, but then I'll have to go away and work out what the story is, and it's quite often I don't feel like I've written it. I feel like it's coming from somewhere else, and you kind of feel like, well, it's already existed out there in the universe, but I've just got to like translate it or transcribe it and get it out onto the paper. And sometimes that can happen in 20 minutes, and the whole thing's there.
I like the way you said story too, because you're a great storyteller. It's just not a song about a boy and a girl in love. There's stories. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I think music is very, very meaningful to me, as it is to many of us. But when I started writing tunes, and I did write some tunes that were kind of, I think the lyrics were not my greatest work necessarily. Just looking for rhymes, and I was trying to write in the style of like Hayes and Porter, where every song was some kind of boy meets girl, sort of my baby left me kind of song. And there's a lot of songs in music history, I think, and songs that I love. I usually don't cotton on to the lyrics until such time as I maybe decide I want to learn how to sing it. And sometimes I go and I find the lyrics and I'm like, oh, really? This is saying nothing, but the lyrics are just there to go with the music. But I feel like meaningful music should have meaningful lyrics.
Totally agree.
Yeah, so I do the best I can.
You do it well, man. And so let's go back to the current Diggers. Who's in the band?
So we have the A team. Yep. The A team is Jerry Pantazis on drums.
Yep.
Roger McLaughlin on bass, and Richard Tankard on keys. Richard's been with us for the last 10 years now, since Mel Logan moved up to Queensland. So they're the first core guys, but the way that the band evolved was that as I started traveling a lot, and I was accepting opportunities to go on tour here and there. And in the early days, I found I'd keep trying to put a band together, and after some time it would just implode, because the business is very difficult, and there was not always work ongoing, so people would find other gigs, and there was not always that much money to go around either. So that can be a reason why people decide to go and do something else. But I began hiring professional players, which is how I started getting like Mount Logan's phone number. I got Roger McLaughlin's number. I had the same things. Roger was my favourite bass player when I was a kid, when I was a bass player. And so it took an extraordinary amount of courage to call Roger as well. But so even to this day, so I've got my core players. They're the guys I always call first, and I know if they're able to, if they're available, they'll make sure they'll be there, because the Diggers is so much fun. But sometimes the guys aren't available, and then I've got my little black book of these awesome players that can come in and they just slot in. So we've got Dean Matters playing on the 15th at WOW, and Dean plays with me in the algorithms as well. He's done the Soul Diggers gig so many times. He just come in.
Yeah, no, Dean's been a regular. Dean's been a regular at the club over the years. There's nothing wrong with him. Nothing wrong with him at all.
One of the best.
Yeah. So although your new album's not a Soul Diggers album, I want to have a chat about it. It's a limited album. It's like LP and CD.
Yeah.
It's called Don't Play Guitar Boy. And I believe it's coming out December the 7th.
No.
No?
It's December 7th is the wrap-up. That's the wrap-up party, which we're going to do out at Croydon. And that's an acoustic effort. No, look, it's multifaceted, the story behind that and how it all came together. But look, there's a lot of pressure still for musicians to regularly release material, but we are working in a new environment where a lot of people are accessing their music via streaming and online means, which don't give much income for musicians, but it's still the cost of producing quality releases is still the same. So anyway, so it's all a bit of a quandary. This is not complaining about it. It's just how it is. It's all changed and evolved. So what are we going to do? So I decided that what I could do was put out a solo release. It's another part of the aim was simply to remind people that that's another thing that I do, and I love to do it. I love to go out and play just acoustic guitar shows. But I recorded a mix of old songs that have been in the set for a long time, a couple of covers and a couple of new ones. And the reason for that was that I said to Max Crawdaddy on Triple R, one of the advantages of being an obscure underground unknown artist is that there's always a new audience. And so as I go out and I play shows, there's some people have never seen me play before. They'll come up and say, "Oh, gee, I really like that song about the Don't Play Guitar Boy song," or I really like your version of Whipping Post, or the Train song, or all these things. And they'll say, "Can I buy it? Do you have it on a CD?" And so they don't realise, well, that was released 25, 30 years ago, and there are no more CDs. It was an independent CD, and you can't get it. So I figured that there was an audience there that I could sell these tunes to, but I've kind of been taken by surprise. We only did 200 vinyls. I recorded it on a reel-to-reel vintage machine, Toyland Studios here in Melbourne. So I did just 200 vinyls. I wasn't going to do CDs, but as I spoke to it all went through my mailing list, and I had enough people come back and say, "Oh, what about a CD? I'll buy one." So I did just 300 of those, and we marketed it as a limited edition. It's a collectible, and this was, the whole hope was like, look, if we can sell these as a collectible, then when we put it up on streaming, we can at least be comfortable that like it's paid for itself, and I've made a certain amount of income for the effort. But then it will go on to music streaming, like releases often do. So I've just been blown away. It's sold so quickly. We're almost out already.
Fantastic. Yeah. Do you ever envisage a time, because like everyone, vinyl, I've got stacks of vinyl and it disappears, and you can buy vinyl at the op shops, it's 50 cents. Now you go to the op shop and it's $30 or something. Do you envisage a time where it'll only be vinyl and digital, and CDs will go?
No. No, opposite. I think CDs will come back.
Uh-huh.
I think you're got to get. I've been saying this for a while. Um, it's kind of half jokingly, but I honestly think that yeah, like everything turns around, and I think whether it's this generation or the next, or like in the next 5 years or the next 15 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a bunch of kids coming back from the op shop or wherever with CDs and going, "Have you heard these? They sound fantastic."
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was the whole thing when they were first introduced. All of us went bananas over CDs because there was no crackle. They were so crystal clear, and technically speaking, like I'll probably get somebody come back at me for this, but technically speaking, they are superior sound. There is something about vinyl though. I love old vinyls as well. But I think there's something about there is a warmth in there. There's like a I don't know, like a natural progression from the stylus onto the vinyl. But the crackle is not ideal, but at the same time there's something kind of heartening and nice about it. But you're also, when you're playing a vinyl, you're committed to listening to it.
Yes. You can't skip.
It's only got to go for 20 minutes. And so, but generally, that vinyl record gives you a relationship with the music that has not been surpassed by anything. That's one of the funny things with the streaming, because you've got infinite kind of music playing, but I think people tend to tune out. They put the playlist on and then just forget it's happening. And a lot of songs, but it suggests songs that you don't know, but mostly they're just songs you don't know, so you don't really connect with them, and it winds up just being in the background. Everybody's different, but yeah, that was another reason for going all analog, and just doing the direct into the mics, no overdub. It's sort of like my just deliberately going the other way to full digital AI algorithms, all that stuff.
It's interesting though, like as I get older, I'm 70 years of age, I'm sitting in my chair and I put a record on and you get into it and then it'll finish, you go, oh bugger, I've got to get up and turn it over now. You're equally adept at either solo or in the band. Is one or the other more difficult? I gather with solo, you've got no support around you, so if something goes wrong, it's you. Or do you like both equally as much?
They're both really difficult. I love them both for different reasons. It's one of the reasons why I pursued both electric guitar and acoustic guitar. I still play bass guitar at home. I've completely lost my chops. Don't ask me to come and play bass. But I love to play bass. It's essentially a guitar as well. It's just a different way of playing. But playing with the band or with a band, or even just getting together and jamming with other musicians. The electric guitar is perfectly suited for it because you can control your volume, you can play rhythm, you can play single string leads, you can put some effects on it and so on. So it just becomes very versatile for contributing to whatever project you're a part of. And there's a camaraderie with the musicians. I think I decided early on. So I used to do a little bit of theatre, and I was doing dramatic arts and so on when I was at school, as well as music. And I think I decided at some point in my young life that I just preferred to hang out with musicians. I just think, you know, for the most part, they're a lot of fun, and the connection that you have when you're making music together, and there's a conversational thing. There's been a lot of musicians, like a lot of my bandmates that I've had over the years, and people that I've felt that I've really connected with more when we're playing the music together than when we're hanging out backstage together. Once we're on stage, that's where I feel like the conversation really starts to happen. Whereas, you know, I mean, I'm a bit shy and awkward most of the time, but yeah, but if we can converse with guitar, bass, and drums, you know, yeah. But playing solo, it's a different thing. You know, it's a challenge, and I can just disappear into the music by myself. So then the relationship is even more directly between myself and the audience. You know? But yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, if all is going well, I'm floating up there somewhere while the music's going on.
We seen it a little bit last night. We were both at the Blues Awards. Some fantastic people got some awards, but with the audience too, I find the blues people the musicians and the audience all seem like family to me.
Yeah,
it's fantastic, you know. And
yeah, well, you know, it's Kerry mentioned it last night. Yeah, that growing up out of Epping, and she felt she didn't fit in, and she was more into. She spent so much time with her music and singing, and so. But it, you know, it sounds like that was largely a solitary pursuit for her early on. So, like, that resonated with me because the more I got into music as I was a kid, I mean, there was nobody else in the little town where I grew up that was really into it. You know, there was a few kids at school that played guitar, and yeah, everyone was listening to 3XY and following the hits of the day. I was to a certain extent, but as became, you know, music began to change around, you know, 1979, 1980, when the whole new wave thing happened. I tapped out. There wasn't enough guitar in it for me. and I was impressed by musicians. I wasn't impressed by pop stars.
Yeah.
I wasn't into the pop star thing. I was into the music and really great playing, and then I was lucky enough to have an older guy take me under his wing. He was an old jazz musician guy called Alan Watson, and Alan was he was like my best mate. But he was, you know, I was 15, he was 55 or something, you know. So whilst I learned a lot from Alan, and Alan introduced me to a lot of great players around the place, and we did a lot of gigs together. But he was from a different era, and when I discovered the blues, I even then found that even a lot of these musicians that I was enjoying playing jazz with, they, you know, the blues was not their thing. So I felt isolated. None of my mates. I played in rock bands, but they all thought the blues that I was listening to was all old hat and passé. So coming to Melbourne, and I got to tell you, man, there's Bob Settergreen's Blues on the Boil. That was the band that I discovered. I used to go to Gaslight and get a stack of records and take them home and listen to them. And I got the Blues on the Boil one because it looked interesting. And that was the point for me. As I'm listening to it, I'm like, man, this is fantastic. And I'm reading the liner notes and realising they're from Melbourne. And it mentioned their gig, their regular gig at the Limerick Arms at that time. That's where it was recorded. And so I went and sought them out. and I became a Blues on the Boil fan. I used to, that's where I'd go every weekend. I'd go and watch them play. And I think I became such a familiar face. You know, I'd always sitting there by myself.
Yeah.
You know, I'd just watch the band and then I'd drive home and practice all these things. There was always great players, and it was led by Bob Settergreen, who's a jazz legend, absolute motherfucker piano player. But he's a jazz guy that totally digs the blues. Yeah. Totally digs it, totally gets it, and actively promotes it. And it was his drummer, Gordon Pendleton, that came and sat down one time. I'd been going along for months. He just came, sat down with his drink, and just said, "How you going? What's your story?" Then he found out I played guitar, and Bob came down and said, "Yeah, bring it along next week. We'll get you." And that began the whole thing. So I only told you that story because it was like it was from there. That was sort of my portal into. It's like I found my people, and that's what it still feels. I was thinking about this last night, especially as I'm watching Paulie and Kerry and Winston Gallia being honoured as well, John Durr and they're just part of our. These are all people that I just think, good on you. It's like you get it, and everyone here gets it. Like everyone in that room and beyond are the people that have heard the blues and connected with it, and just like we get it, and not everybody does.
Agree. Now you've just inspired me for when we at the club. I'm gonna get Roger to play lead and you to play bass on one song.
He'd be up for it. He'd be up for it. His first band, Roger's Dodgers, he was the lead guitar player.
Oh, well, see, I didn't know that.
He's got some guitar chops. He can.
All right. Cool. Hey, just a question to finish up with, Geoff. Do you think it's harder these days to be a full-time musician? Is it getting harder to do that?
Look, I will say this: it's always been hard. It's never been easy. I do hear that comment a lot. People say, "Oh, it's so hard these days." It's always been hard. It's never ever been easy. The first gigs that I did when I put my first, I didn't put it together. It came together. There was the band was called Just Blues. Marky Grundon was playing drums, Travis Clark on bass, Steve Sepro playing harmonica, and when we went out and did our first gigs, I remember one of the first shows that we played was at the Sydenham Hotel in Richmond, and we opened up for Snake Hips. And so at the end of it, they'd go through the figures, and it's that classic Blues Brothers thing. It's a joke on the film, but musicians that watch it are like, hang on. But we had earned, the money on the door while we were playing was, I can't remember what it was, X amount. But then they were like, and then you owe us this for using the PA, and you owe us this for the lights, and you owe us this for the beer, and you owe us this for the guy taking the money on the door. So you owe us. Right. We had to fork out, like $10 each. God.
And if people were there drinking their beer because you were there. It's crazy.
That's how you start off. You got to. That's what they talk about, paying your dues and earning your stripes. It's still hard work, doing it, but. Whilst, things change, things evolve. One of the things that we didn't have back in the day was the fantastic, incredible tools that are now available to promote yourself. So we had I been able to make like I can whip up a flyer for a gig in minutes now and send it. So the person that's asked for it can have it before the hour is up. From nothing to there's your flyers in all these different sizes, and here's a video. and they start promoting the gig that day. I mean, how did we do it before? Yeah, we'd get on the
that's right.
Down the post office.
That's right.
And have these fuzzy out of focus pictures, and and it would take 2 weeks. To get all that together. If you were trying to contact an agent and discuss them booking you, you'd have to get all that together and put it in a package and then post it off, and then wait 3 weeks for them to get it, and all that.
So changing,
so a lot of things have changed. I mean, even the fact you can write, record, and release a song in before 24 hours is up.
And have some guy record you a guitar lick in America and send it to you and whack it on your song.
So some things get harder, some things get easier, but it's always been hard.
Thanks for having a chat, Geoff. It's great. We're so looking forward to seeing you on Sunday, December the 15th. Yes, it's December the 15th, because you've been coming to our club for way back. So it's always a thrill to have the Soul Diggers in the house. So I'll see you on the 15th, mate. Thanks so much.
Always thrilled to be at WOW. Thanks for having me.